his name is
John Cena. He's one of the most badass wrestlers on this planet. He marched his way all the way to Hollywood and became a reputable actor. And he acquired himself a good-sized fortune along the way. So, what did he do with all that money? Well, he bought cars. A lot of cars. So, if you want to hear all about his diverse collection, you are in the right place. Because in this video, I'm going to take you into the inside walls of John Cena's badass car collection. So, if you're new here, I'm your new friend Brad Danger. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, because we're dropping new content pretty much every other day. Buckle up, let's go. Okay, let's start off this list with one of John's most controversial cars that he's ever owned. It's his 2017 Ford GT. And in 2017, half a century after Ford went 1, 2, 3 podium in Le Mans, Ford decided it was time to make another generation of their GT supercar. But this time it came with a stipulation. You had to apply for one. With only a limited number of these new cars, Ford knew that the demand was going to be extremely high. So they decided they wanted to handpick each of the owners based on their criteria. But let me tell you, that demand was 100% there. Ford nearly got 6 times more applicants than the amount of total cars produced. So it was a big deal, not only for Cena, but also for Ford when it announced that Cena had been allocated a new $450,000 GT. As half a century of racing pedigree and engineering went into the build of the new Ford GT, the new GT made a statement, and it was one for the history books. So it was a bit of a surprise when Cena sold his GT a few weeks into his ownership, especially after signing a legal binding contract that they gave to all new GT owners, which said that they could not sell their car for 2 years or 24 months, whichever came first. This put Cena in boiling hot water with Ford, as he was then promptly sued by them. And Cena admitted to flipping the GT because he needed cash to pay the bills. But the lawsuit never went to court and a settlement was reached. But you tell me, when he purchased the car for $450,000 and sold it weeks later for a whopping $1.54 million, who's having the last laugh? But that's not actually the end of the car. It's done a total of 635 miles and been through 5 owners in just 2 years. And most of the original owners of the second generation Ford GT owned at least one other generation of GT as well. And this rings true for Cena, as he also owned a first generation GT. Yep, that's right. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Cena not only owned a second gen, but also a first gen GT as well. And back in 2005, this American supercar pushed the boundaries of what people thought American cars could be. Sure, America had the Corvette, but they weren't mid-engine beasts pumping out supercar besting numbers, and it gave the modern Ferraris a good run for their money. That is, up until Ford decided to sell them. Buyers just weren't sure if American supercars would be able to live up to the hype. But let me assure you, it did. And John Cena knew that too, because the value of these GTs are well north of $300,000. So it's fair to say he made the right choice. And he purchased his off a lot in a very rare spec. But what happens when you truly want a one-off car? Well, you build something that no one else has. And that's exactly what John Cena did with a wrecked Corvette, one that he turned into a masterpiece. Meet the Corvette Incenarator. The custom bodywork was designed and rendered by the Park Brothers Concepts, who have designed their fair share of masterpieces. But when John Cena came at them and told them to come up with something that looked like it had just traveled back in time to the year 3000, this is what they came up with. And if you ask me, it looks more like a Hot Wheels than even the Corvette that it's based off of. The Incenarator comes with 8 exhaust pipes made to shoot fireballs at the touch of a button. And to keep it futuristic, Cena opted for the car not to have any doors whatsoever, but instead a 3-piece windshield dome door thing. The Incenarator was on a tight 30-day turnaround from Corvette to concept, and the final result is definitely an in-your-face futuristic concept. Now, the Incenarator is a Corvette at heart, but that is not his only Corvette. He's also got a C6 Corvette ZR1. The C6 Corvette ZR1 was the first ever factory Corvette to stray away from its naturally aspirated roots. CEO at the time, Rick Wagner, liked this $60,000 Z06 so much that he wondered what a $100,000 Corvette would look like, and the designers and engineers got busy dreaming up anything and everything to make its range-topping Corvette amazing. And the end result was this magnificent masterpiece that rolled off showroom floors in 2009, and it was the fastest thing that GM had ever made up until that point. And the new LS9 power plant produced a whopping 638 horsepower with over 600 foot-pounds of torque, which was a speed demon because the top speed was a mind-numbing 205 miles per hour. It was absolutely mental. Cena was lucky enough to get the keys to the 73rd ZR1 produced. And while he liked the power, he wasn't actually the biggest fan of it. So his next car has similar power, but it costs a whole heck of a lot more than the Corvette. I'm talking about his Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren Roadster. The Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren was essentially one of the most iconic early 2000s supercars. At the time, Mercedes owned 40% of McLaren. So the car was actually made in England in a McLaren factory. And no, it wasn't made alongside other McLarens because, well, McLaren hadn't established itself as an auto manufacturer until 2011 with the MP412C. But traces of the old and new McLarens find their way into the SLR to truly make it one of the most unique cars of its time. The extra long hood hides a supercharged 5.4 liter V8 with over 600 horses and plenty of torque to shred the rear tires at any speed. John Cena's is a black roadster that he says screams Darth Vader. So if a Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren Roadster screams Darth Vader, what does a Plymouth Superbird scream? Well, I couldn't tell you, but it is sure in your face. Built to bypass NASCAR's strict rules, Plymouth outsmarted NASCAR by creating a car off the showroom floor like no other car sold before. Cars that participated in NASCAR at the time were actually stock cars. Unlike what we have today, the cars had to come from the showroom floors. So Plymouth decided they were going to try to find a way to make their cars faster around the track and made it into a road car. And the Plymouth Roadrunner Superbird was able to absolutely dominate at NASCAR. It was able to trap over 200 miles per hour on the track, something that had never been done by any NASCAR before. But even crazier than their racing pedigree in NASCAR is that if you had the cash, you could go to the dealership and buy one and drive it on the street. John Cena was lucky enough to come across one, and his is lacquered in a super bright shade of orange. Yeehaw! John Cena sure likes his cars bright, and his Lamborghini Gallardo is no different. His 2009 Lamborghini Gallardo LP560-4 is green. And if you didn't know that he calls it his Lamborghini, well, now you do. And it's not just any shade of green. It has been done in Verde Scandal, which is a very rare choice special ordered from Lambo. But it doesn't stop there. The original owner wanted even more of that color, so he redid the interior, and all I can say is that it's close. Not the same shade, but hey, it's the thought that counts, right? Now, why did John Cena eventually sell the car? Probably because he just didn't really fit in it, or because it isn't American and John Cena just loves American muscle. And one of his favorite muscle cars of all time is his 1969 COPO Camaro, because back in 2007, Cena dished out $175,000 for this beauty. Why so much for an old muscle car, you ask? Well, his COPO Camaro had just completed a frame-off restoration just before he added it to his fleet. And his car has been preserved in the garnet red paint color, which was the original paint color that it rolled off the assembly line with. Not only is it aesthetically perfect, it's also a numbers matching car. So it has its original engine and drivetrain from all the way back in 1968. And it only gets more rare as it's one of only a handful of cars that received a chambered exhaust from the factory, which was soon discontinued because the sound levels exceeded noise regulations in almost every single state. So what is even so special about a COPO Camaro? Well, to sum it up, it's pretty much the baddest Camaro that you could order at the time. The name COPO stands for something. It's Central Office Production Order, which back in 1969 was the process of ordering fleet vehicles. But at the time, General Motors had a corporate ban against installing engines over 400 cubic inches in anything but full-size cars and Corvettes. And while the SS and Z28 trims of the Camaro got the 350 V8, some people, they just wanted that glorious 427 out of the Corvette in the Camaro. So Chevrolet was able to find a loophole through the COPO fleet ordering system to fit that 427 cubic inch engine into the Camaro. And as a result, about 1,000 COPO Camaros were ever produced. Luckily, there were more Dodge Vipers made, so he was able to get his hands on one of those as well. And yes, he has a beautiful 2006 Dodge Viper, which, like himself, is powerful, it's muscular, it's loud, and it's a bit obnoxious. And if you haven't seen me go all the way across the US in a Gen 1 Viper that shoots flames, might want to go check out that video up here. But Cena has an undying love for all things American. So the fact that he has Dodge's flagship model doesn't surprise us. But the 500 horsepower probably surprises him. The Viper is powered by a monstrous 8.3 liter naturally aspirated V10, which is like no other engine. From its low end grunt to its high revving scream, the Dodge Viper V10 is one of the coolest engines ever offered in any car. Just listen to it scream out of its side pipes. And while it might not be the most luxurious car, or as far away from that as possible, that's not what it was built for. It was built for putting smiles on the faces of the driver and anybody within 2 square miles of the car. And this next car is easily his most favorite of all time, and he'll never sell it. Any guesses of what it is? It's a 1989 Jeep Wrangler. Yeah, an old Wrangler? He is a proud owner of an 89 Jeep Wrangler because it was the first big purchase after signing his WWE contract. This Jeep has a mild lift with wheels and tires and a brush guard. But it's not a very expensively built Jeep like you'd expect. And sure, he's got enough money to upgrade it, but it's priceless to John Cena because it represents that he made it. Just imagine his garage lined with supercars and desirable muscle cars, and then next to it sits a old Jeep. One that has been with him through the thick and the thin, and one that has just been old faithful. Now, we just touched the surface of what John Cena actually owns. He has a stable full of old classics, some with even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of resto mods. But in the interest of time, we were only able to scratch the surface. So tell me, which car would you take out of John Cena's garage? Would it be the Incenarator? For me, definitely be the Ford GT. I think that is one badass ride. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And if you're new here, well, I'm your new friend, Brad Danger, and subscribe and turn on that notification bell. You guys absolutely rock and keep living the ideal lifestyle.